Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's a panel discussion on the pragmatic future, alternatives to third-party cookies. This discussion will cover points like how marketers have to adapt to a major behavioral change, deviating from the regular practice of digital marketing, the major limitations of a walled garden, especially while gauging campaign effectiveness. How do digital-first brands see first-party data playing a crucial role in a cookies-less future, etc.? I would like to invite Devesh Gupta, Lead Brand Solutions, ET Brand Equity, to moderate the discussion. Welcome, Devesh. Over to you.
Hello, and welcome everyone to the next session of the day, the programmatic future, alternative to third-party cookies. Digital marketers love cookies. For years, brands have been using them to track website visitors, improve the user experience, and collect data that helps them to target the right audiences and learn about what their visitors are checking online and understand their behavior. According to a report, the global ad spend for programmatic advertising in 2020 reached an estimate of $129 billion and is expected to hover around $150 billion by 2021. Although the way brands have been using cookies and ad tracking tools will change dramatically with Google's effort to phase out third-party cookie by 2023. Now, as the cookie crumbles, it is important to understand how marketers and advertisers are reacting to this change. So, without wasting any time, let me introduce you to my guest today. My first guest for the day is Ms. Smita Murarka, CMO, Duroflex. Welcome, Smita.
Thank you so much, Devesh.
My next guest for the day is Mr. Rohit Verma, CEO and co-founder Torque AI. Welcome, Rohit.
Thank you. Thank you, Devesh. Thanks.
My next guest for the day is Mr. Amit Yadav, Country Manager, South Asia, Programmatic. Welcome, Amit.
Hello everyone.
And my final guest for the day is Mr. Anand Naran, VP Marketing and Customer Experience, Bata. Welcome, Anand.
Thank you, Devesh, for having me here.
Thank you, everyone, for taking out time and joining for this discussion. So first things first, I'll go to Smita and Anand. What has been your experience with programmatic advertising, and how it has helped your brands in achieving the marketing objectives? Smita, let's begin with you first.
Sure. See, Duroflex as a brand has established its digital presence just 2 years back and really scaled online. And when you're scaling, it is very important to use platforms like programmatic advertising, which gives you an immediate scale and reach. And definitely in that stage, it is something that was of maybe absolute importance. I can't imagine anything as more powerful in the last 2 years, right? So reach, scale, all those things become very possible with programmatic added. Of course, it's not the only mean, but it is a great addition to your whole marketing plan. A lot of what we did last 2 years is on the power of content, which is through social, and the other is using Google through programmatic and YouTube. So these are the three main pillars. With programmatic, it was not a replacement strategy, but it was an add-on strategy. So it got added on to our main plan, our fundamental plan. So while I say it was important, it's also a time for us to find alternatives, which may be possible, which probably we'll discuss in the course of the whole discussion.
Sure.
But definitely, I think as a marketer, our job is to think outside the box and to be open to change. So I'm glad this discussion is happening because it's here. And from a consumer point of view, look, all of us are also consumers. All of us have experienced the similar problems. I mean, there's no consumer sitting in some other world, right? It's all of us too. So all of us have experienced the similar problems of privacy, etc. So it's a real problem, and we need to acknowledge it as marketers and reach out to better measures, which are surely getting evolved now. Yeah.
Anand, how has programmatic worked in the case of Bata?
Sure. So, at Bata, we use, just to describe Bata, so we actually sell across multiple channels. So we evolved from single channel, which is what Bata is typically known for, the exclusive business outlets.
Right.
To over years, we created our own website, the Bata.in, which is a D2C site. And then we started selling on marketplaces like the Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, and, AGO and the others also. And then over the last 2 years, there has been a lot of focus on actually building the omni-channel journey. So, which is having a consistent experience, not just in store, but online, having the similar kind of pricing, the return and the delivery process and policies across there. So at Bata, we have been using the full funnel programmatic advertising. And I believe that, it's the most efficient and scalable way to buy digital ads. It's more machine-led, it's more software-led. Rather than striking, the deals with individual publishers, which was the norm many years back. So it just helps us scale up the marketing activities in a much more efficient way, across there. And then, as Smita was saying, so we use primarily, all sorts of formats for programmatic. So right from cross-device display units like, the banner ads, native banner ads, because for us, it's very important to establish that not just selling shoes, footwear, and accessories, but also in the right kind of environment. So, native ads actually become very important, on certain key publishers, which are more into style and fashion across there, or, into sports. Video advertising, very mainstream, a few years back, it wasn't mainstream, but today I think 30-40% of everybody's budgets are actually spent on video advertising, across there. Streaming, I think streaming audio, I think that behavior actually changed quite a lot during COVID. As people started walking, they became very health conscious. I had never heard podcasts myself, as a user, I was always into music, in those social gatherings, but social gatherings disappeared and, you started walking, and then you were on your own. So what do? You hear podcasts, so platforms like Spotify, Amazon Music, Ghana, I'm just naming a few of them across there. And then, of course, digital outdoor also we use, sometime at the airports across there. So we use quite a lot of them. And then we use, the programmatic ads across the full funnel. So upper funnel, driving primarily the awareness, for the brand or certain sub-brands, So like these days, we are running an unlimited sneaker campaign. So we're just trying to highlight that we have multiple sneakers at Bata, because consumer trend is actually more towards athleisure, So we use full funnel, which is where YouTube and some of the other platforms actually come in very handy in terms of driving the awareness. We also use it for driving, lead generation. So we actually are opening franchise stores across population towns, having a population of 50,000 to 3 lakh, So in those smaller towns, we ask partners to actually join us. So that's where, we run the programmatic lead gen ads. We also drive store traffic. So you do proximity marketing for these new stores. And that typically what Google calls as, O2O, so it's online to offline. Normally they are actually driving the other way, but that's what we have been doing across quite there. So it's more about audience targeting, and then also highly contextual campaigns across there. In the mid funnel, it's more about shoppers moving through the funnel. So, anybody who might have seen a product, we reach back to them, retargeting. So I think that's where the mainstay of the cookies actually helps us, whether first party or third party across there. And then finally, I would say the lower funnel, which is more about remarketing, trying to close the deal, So that's where KPIs like cost per acquisition or on an Amazon platform, it's ACOS, cost of sale, So I think some of those things actually start coming in place. But largely what we are looking from a retailer perspective is, the customer lifetime value. So LTV is very important. So whatever campaigns we are doing, at the end of the day, you are looking at RFM, recency, frequency, and latency between the campaigns, and a long-term value from the same consumer. Because we understand quite a lot about the consumer. There is a loyalty program that we run in CRM campaigns, and therefore that first-party data exists, to actually reach back to them. So I think that's the full 360, I would say, from a programmatic advertising. That's what we do.
Coming to you, Amit, as Smita also mentioned, and
Yeah.
Anand also pointed that, that they have been deploying programmatic advertising, across full funnel, and how Smita has, at Duroflex, they have just started doing it for the last 2 years, and how it has helped them in putting together scale and reach. But there's a large role of understanding the consumer behavior with the cookies. But without the cookies, with the demise of cookies, okay, how will, I mean, this is overall world of programmatic advertising will change in the coming times?
Yeah, good question actually. So we all are aware that cookies was the basis on which the whole ecosystem was built on, whether it is digital or subset of that is programmatic, right? Now that goes away in 2023. Hopefully it does, because it's not just that, it's probably also the consumer privacy laws, consumers becoming more aware of how their data is being used on the internet, the regulations coming in. So the legacy methods of identifying the consumers on the internet are typically going away. Now, what is emerging is a system where consumers are in control of, what they want to see in terms of ads and what they don't want to see in terms of ads. So I would not just say cookie in isolation. I would say cookie going away and customer privacy as the key element of the evolving programmatic ecosystem that will come into play, if not immediately, maybe another 6 months, 1 year down the line, right? The way we see this is as a great opportunity in the sense, because this is kind of complete overhaul of the system, which was based on cookies, but that had its own limitations. For some reason, varied reasons, we were sticking to it. But because of this push, probably everyone is working towards a solution which is kind of cookieless. The way I see this is what Anand also mentioned. We call this kind of a portfolio approach. So mix of deterministic identifiers, those which are built on basically first party data, logged in data, more demo and stuff. Then probabilistic, which is based on more behavioral traits.
Right.
And finally, contextual, which is a more advanced content based targeting, right? And another, so to say, flaw for the cookie was that it was built for desktop, right? So the challenge of tracking a user journey across devices was more painful, across the ecosystem, right? So, and especially when you have, dollars shifting away from the typical display to CTV, to mobile apps, and then linear and non-linear TV, it is all the more important for the marketers to basically look for solutions which is basically built on an identifier which works across devices, across platforms. And that is where I think the whole ecosystem will probably evolve in the coming years, where cookie will not be the base, but identifiers, although identifiers will not be just a single point solution. I think it's going to be a portfolio approach where people will work with a mix of identifiers, like I said, in deterministic, maybe probabilistic, and also contextual.
Okay.
And also, I think this will also be a good opportunity for the open web to be, at a level playing field with the walled gardens, because typically they control the entire ecosystem and, open web, but still based on cookies. Now that everything is crumbling, now it's a I will say it's a level playing field for everyone to basically come up with a solution which works across open web and probably also across the walled gardens.
Rohit, do you concur with Amit's views? And how do you see first party data and the other identifiers that Amit mentioned as crucial to marketers?
Thanks, Devas. And I think Amit covered most of the points, and I really appreciate the angles that it looked at in order to get the first party and the cookie synced in for and future proofing the brands. But I think like Amit mentioned that there is an inflection point the industry is going to hit very soon, and there is a huge change which is going to come about, and thanks to Google, the innovation has started. I see two kinds of approach here. One, of course, is evaluating how brands and agencies want to look at the vanity metrics or the dashboards which are made available. And under the layer of those dashboards, another approach is that you look under the hood and you understand the flow of money, the flow of data, the user level data. Now, if you really ask me the importance of first party data, I mean, it's like, as important as food to us. I mean, if you don't eat, we don't survive. And for any advertiser or agency, the first party data is the first leg of digital communication or messaging. Now, I think some of the companies have already gone in and started building it. Some of the companies are thinking about it, but in mature markets, I would say that the focus on first party data is a lot more.
Okay.
And the reason, of course, it's a legwork. It's a deviation from earlier practices of digital advertising. But the organization needs to come together to pool in the anonymized non-PII data and put together a system in which they are bringing in second-party data, third-party data, data federations with publications, and most importantly, the bid stream data. So what I normally tell our partners is that your access is just not the first party data that you have, but your access is the entire internet universe. And why just limit yourself to the data that you own? Why not add bid stream data and understand a lot more? Because when you are advertising, you're already accessing that kind of data. It's just that you're not looking into it. So first party data becomes very, very important from that perspective. It opens a new world for you, wherein you understand, say, for instance, I interact with, say, Bata 10% of my time. Okay, but 90% of my time I'm interacting with other brands. Would Bata like to understand what is my 90% like, and get to understand more lookalikes, more targetable audience outside of just the user base that Bata has? Of course, that makes a lot of sense. So that is the starting point. And then, of course, practitioners have at agencies and brands, they have some misconceptions that the PII data will get leaked, it's not privacy compliant, etc. But I just want to assure all of them that the technology has moved on from what it was in early 2000 to now, when anonymized non-PII data can be kept at a media exchange level, and you can target media right then and there at impression level. So you can have publisher data, your data partner data come into play, and then you can target, retarget, etc. Another important point as far as first party data is concerned, that sometimes you let go first party data because you think that you have only X number of attributes. But I can tell you that there are companies who have invested deeply into first party data, and they have per user almost 5,000 to 8,000 attributes coming from the first party, second party, third party bid stream, these 4 or 5 good data sources. So my sense is that going forward, if you're not putting this in place, then of course you have challenges when the cookie deprecates. And then, of course, we're going to talk about it a little later.
So, taking your point, Rohit, I want to come to Anand and Smita. Have you guys at your respective organizations started investing into first party data? More, although I'm sure you would have been, collecting first party data through, a lot of means, but, have you started thinking about, how you will be, solely relying on these, on the first party data in the coming days?
Sure. So I'll just like to add, to your previous question, what Amit and Rohit said, just for the sake of our listeners, So I think just wanted to add a nuance there, it's the first party and third party cookies. And I think Amit and Rohit both mentioned that. So the first parties are the cookies, if a consumer comes to a bata.insight, bata.com, these are the cookies that we drop, onto the domain browser, So these cookies are the ones which we use for understanding the analytical behavior of the consumer, remembering their preferences like language, or where did they drop off, and therefore, retargeting and everything. So I think these first party cookies will not be blocked or phased out. I think I just wanted to highlight that. It is the third party cookies which are actually created by third party, let's say another platform, let's say a publisher, which are actually going to be, phased out by, let's say, the Safaris and Chromes of the world, Firefox or IE. So I think that's one. I think coming back to your question, yes, we have been actually investing quite a lot on CRM. So I think we started a loyalty program at Bata about 5 or 6 years back. And since then, we have actually built a strong CRM database of about 30 million consumers. Okay. And we actually track, what is the monthly active user rate. We actually track it more on an annual basis. The idea is that, we are using this program to, first of all, as Rohit also said, we don't have so much, in terms of 5,000 attributes like some of the other brands or exchanges might have. But yes, we have a reasonable number of attributes in terms of understanding what are the shopping instruments they actually use in terms of, let's say credit card or debit card, what's the preference, where do they live, what do they buy, are they like single men, single women, family, or, couple, because we can actually see by analyzing it. And therefore we use it for segmenting our data and also building a customer single view. So in India, mostly because it's easy to actually use mobile number as a PII. So we actually use mobile. But what we have seen is that over the years, the moment you start capturing the second and third PII, much like an email ID, it gives you another channel to actually communicate. So this multi-channel capability actually helps you increase not just the frequency of repurchase, but also, in terms of the average lifetime value also of these consumers. So what do we do? So while we actually are building the customer single view, we are actually also segmenting the database for next best offers, or let's say predictive modeling and recommendations. So somebody who bought, let's say, a pair of school shoes, the kids would be ready, to actually upgrade to the next shoe, let's say in 6 to 9 months. So, we can actually send them some communication across there, maybe with a voucher. And the things that we use, to actually evaluate the program is more around LTV, which is long-term value. Or reduce the latency between two purchases, or RFM, which is the recency and frequency of the purchase across there. Now, as we actually go further next, what we're realizing is that as the cookies crumble, we need a far superior understanding about our consumers. And that's where we started thinking about: is my first party data enough, or can I actually work with some friendly brands, as Amit mentioned, with a second party data? So, example being, an airline company can actually work with a credit card company, and a footwear company like Bata can work with an apparel company, of course, with the consumer's consent. But can we actually make the data actually more richer across there? So I think that's another one that we are thinking. The third one is, how do we actually evolve into something which is called as customer data platforms? Because if you look at the traditional CRM programs, they rely on, consumer who has shopped with you, and therefore you can actually reach back to them. But on my website, because we are an omni-channel retailer, on my website, I get a lot of, those early, unknown consumers. These are prospects, unknown prospects. They have not actually given me an email ID or a mobile number, and they just dropped out. So with the CDPs, I can first of all actually track, so whether known or unknown across there. So I think that's one of the benefits to actually evolve to a CDP, the customer data platform. It actually also has a lot of connectors by which, you can actually, connect different attributes of consumers in a much more easier fashion. So, if you look at a traditional CRM system, they will take a lot of time to actually, build that customer single view. But with CDP, it's much more faster because these are the companies which are actually optimizing the solution for, usage across touch points across there. Secondly, the ability of a CDP, to actually segment, slice and dice the data and use AI and ML to actually build those segments on the fly, actually that actually also increases, the capability to actually reach out to consumers. And finally, the biggest difference between a CDP and a traditional CRM or a loyalty program is that you can set cross-channel campaigns and the frequency capping across it. I think that's not possible in the traditional system. So I can say, okay, reach out to this consumer, with a frequency cap of 5. It doesn't matter whether you catch them on Google or Facebook or, YouTube or wherever, or Amazon, across there. So I think that's what, and we are actually evaluating it. Some functionality of CDP already exists, like the customer single view. But as we go next, in this space of cookieless world, I think that's something that retailers and e-commerce companies would actually, some of them have actually rolled it out and some are actually evaluating, what tech they actually do. So I think from a MarTech perspective, it becomes very critical for us to actually see what steps we take in terms of building the technology stack.
The technology part, yeah.
Yeah.
So Smita, I mean, like, in your case, have you started working on the first party data since, you started the programmatic spends nearly 2 years ago? So how it is, I mean, like, how are you thinking about the first party data and, the other identifiers?
Yeah, I think a lot of what Anand said, right? We are also in our journey to become a full fledged Omni brand. While we have Omni as principles of price parity, product parity, first category, but in technology adoption, we are truly becoming that as we speak. So for an Omni brand, actually, it's imperative because you're primarily growing the brand through D2C channels, right? Direct to consumer. And that means are really understanding your consumers, which programmatic can't do. However, compared to Bata and some of the consumer categories, we're a very different category where our lifetime value is not measurable really because the mattress is purchased once in 10 years, 12 years.
True.
And for that, we are taking a lot of different business decisions. So we are
Mm.
adding a lot of product categories which are add-on like bed linen, furniture. So a lot of ranges which help consumer come back. Also, for our category, referral is very important. So the role that loyalty plays for repeat purchase in categories such as Bata, we have something as powerful as referral, right? So building that through recommendations through tools. Again, our website is very robust. So we have to build engagement tools, Martech around website, as Anand also mentioned, which are more engagement, which are driven through really personalized communication, and you don't need to track the consumer beyond that journey, right? You understand what their journey has been on the website. So and if you see the ecosystem of marketing itself, right, it's evolving into social selling, it's evolving into WhatsApp. You have apps like Misho coming. So I think the whole ecosystem and the power of 1:1 is really growing anyway. Probably it was time, everything has a high and a downfall. Probably it was time where, actually consumers were experiencing a very, very high degree of invasion or communication which is not so relevant to them, and probably this was a thing that was disturbing their experience with the brand. So I think for us it's very important to see what next, as I said earlier, to really see alternatives, but not because we are losing out on something, but because we need to deepen our connect with consumers. Probably this is that black swan event for marketing, right, where we really understand our consumers and good connecting with them more. We're also living in a very connected world. So today, content, social is very important, and then you lead them to your WhatsApp. So that whole
Journey,
the
yeah.
whole journey, understanding that I think is a critical piece more than getting new kind of consumers from every source. I don't think that was really leading to much results as we move ahead anyway. That's a positive way of looking at it, of course. But there are many means, and I think as all growing brands, it's imperative that your first party data collection or your collaboration with brands, as Anand said, should have started by now. And it's not something, if you haven't, then please go ahead and start it, because it's not because third party tracking is not available. It was something you should anyways have done as a growing brand. And definitely, in fact, it is also a measure where strong brands will get stronger. right?
True,
Because
true.
if you understand your consumer, if your own platforms are strong and people are interacting with you, actually it's a measure for strong brands getting stronger, and the whole ecosystem becoming more navigating towards better brands. So I think for a brand like ours, we are looking at this as something good, and we are building all our systems for it.
So have you started building on those collaborations? And then, what kind of partners do you think for your category would be, apt for those collaborations?
Yeah, as I said, apart from tech interventions like the engagement tools on website, like we have yellow messengers, WhatsApp communication, which we engage with. There are many tools that we've deployed. Apart from that, banks are a great, great ecosystem for something like us, consumer durable brands. So all the brands of home, finance, banking, because it's a more serious purchase, more expensive purchase, one-time purchase, and more importantly the power of referrals in our category. I think that's very strong, and that's been kind of what do you say, it's not utilized as much, it's not harnessed as much. So that's something that we're looking forward to really harness more meaningfully. So these are things that we're working on. And for us, one consumer is very important, and that one purchase is very important.
True.
Which even through programmatic, as I said, it's part of the journey, right? People don't buy mattress looking at a Google banner the way they do buying a top or a shoe or anything. So definitely, it's just part of that journey.
Okay.
We need to do a lot of things to convince the consumer to spend 10,000, 12,000 bucks minimum.
True. True.
So for us, it's in fact it's going to be probably easier to kind of navigate this change.
No, absolutely. Coming to you, Amit. Taking on from Smita's point, where she was talking about, one-on-one communication. So, with the cookie crumbling, how difficult it would be, to create that one-on-one communication, or how easy would it be to create that one-on-one communication and a personalized communication based on the first-party data?
Yeah, so I think there are two aspects to this. One is not just personalized communication, and we know that the cookies goes away. It's kind of blessing in disguise, because cookies was not meant for cross-device targeting or mapping, right? Both Anand and Smita mentioned about their efforts around mapping the users
Yes.
across platform. Now, what that basically translates into less wastage of advertising spends, in the sense, because now you know the user journey end to end. So you are kind of not duplicating the messages. You are showing relevant ads, and at the same time, based on the user journey, you are messaging him on a more one-to-one basis. So, for example, let's say um, you show the overall brand message, let's say on desktop, and then you know that user will probably migrate to, let's say, in-app, and then eventually to a CTV. So you are kind of graduating it from a brand to a product, and then product to, let's say, a price-led decision. So basically, it helps in personalizing the message. Basically, because you have made an effort to move away from what was cookie driven to something which is more, an identifier which can be mapped across all devices or all platforms. Another key aspect, and I just keep coming back to this again and again, is the consumer privacy thing, right? Because users are making a choice to select an ad, to accept, to see an ad, makes it more acceptable in terms of giving the message. So which means you are less irritated with the, the messaging that is coming across to you, and there is less drop off from a publisher standpoint, because publisher is also now showing the relevant ads. The brand is more acceptable because the ads are now relevant to him, and he is probably more interested in going beyond the brand, going specific to the product, and then to the pricing decision. So I would say yes, there is a good opportunity to migrate from what was anyway a redundant solution to something which is more robust and more personalized for users and kind of acceptable to consumers as well.
So Rohit, along with the first party data, what are the other alternatives, that are available to the marketeers?
Absolutely. I think the different companies in the industry are working towards some form of ID systems. Uh, Last I checked was about 50 such companies where I think Programmatic itself is working on it. And then you have others. But
So we,
yeah, please.
sorry, we are not working on any identity solution, just to be clear.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. That gives me a lot of space here then. Okay. And I'm going to announce this on this forum. So, um, there's very interesting prototype that we've done, and we are just soon to go out in the market. Is an ID built on the telecom network. So, like I think initially Anand touched upon, the mobile number never changes, right? I mean, it always remains the same. So once you're hitting the telco network, we map the mobile number with the first party data. Of course, everything is like regulatory approved, and it's within the telecom policies. So anonymized mobile number mapped to the first party and the other kind of cookies. That ID system, we've done some prototype, and it's come out very interesting from a results perspective. And I think that we have taken on ourselves that we will roll out on a all India basis and go out in other parts of the world as well, because I think the telcos have started to come into the ad network platform, as you already seen. Airtel and Jio coming in. So we're working with all three of them to release an ID which will be comparable to what cookie does. In fact, more deterministic than that. And why I say deterministic is because the mobile number doesn't change. And also it's cross-device, cross-platforms, cross-browsers, so it supersedes all other ID systems that possibly are available in the market. So I think I can see that telco ID system could be a very big replacement of this, and industry as such need not worry that there would not be any alternate. So there is an alternate.
Okay. That's that also serves the purpose of for informing the listeners of today's session. I mean, like there are alternatives along with the first party data which are available to the market, or which will be soon available to the market.
Absolutely.
That's pretty interesting. As we come to the end of this session, I want to take a quick opinion from all of you that as the entire ecosystem will go cookieless. I mean, like how will the overall digital advertising, the programmatic it will reshape the future of programmatic advertising going forward. Smita, I'll begin with you first.
It's going to reshape the whole digital ecosystem, not only digital advertising, right? And there's something that I believe in, and now people are talking about that digital marketing as a term, I think, was given too much weightage. It's really digital and part of marketing. So part of digital is programmatic. I think
Correct.
all of need to really understand that finally your marketing principle is to connect with the consumer, to sell great products, to reach to a medium which he or she is available. I think we should have those fundamentals very clear. There are new mediums getting formed. There are consumers that are moving to newer things. Now, if you look at TV, there is OTT as an alternate. There also we are talking about how do we read the data. So this data reading, while it is very important, I think it's not the only means to kind of understand your consumer journey. We should go beyond that. Programmatic advertising was used in the past to connect your consumer at a very large scale. I think we should understand the consumer from a very individual perspective. We should use the consumer to really reach out to more consumers versus just going blind in. I think so. I don't think the role of programmatic advertising will change. It is the way we are looking at our marketing strategy that needs to change. And cookie crumbling, third party crumbling is really a derivative of consumer need of privacy, right? So, like that, consumer need will emerge, I think, every now and then with the changing dynamics. As
Mhm.
marketers, we need to be clear about that and build our ecosystem around that, is my takeaway. Definitely for programmatic advertisers, which are not brands, it's probably a very life-changing moment where they really have to rethink how are they going to get, the kind of investments from brands, and what is their strategy. So that's something that even we are looking forward to hear. But as a brand, yeah, there's enough avenues to really harness reaching out to the consumers even today.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Anand, your thoughts?
Sure. So I think I'm echoing, what Smita also said. So I think if you really paint the picture, once cookies start, going away, third-party cookies especially, so what will digital marketing look like, and I think what we have been hearing is there's a slight data monopoly, from the tech giants, and I would say also the publisher. I think what Amit actually also mentioned. And therefore, because it's more segmented digital advertising platforms or environments, you will need to be very specific with the audiences and performance measurement, because each company will then say, okay, this is my performance measurement, this is my audience, take it or leave it, because it's a little bit of monopoly that's actually coming up. And therefore, that inconsistency will come in, because, you don't have any tracking, across third-party platforms, across there. The retargeting will need to be pulled back the way we have been traditionally doing. I would say, while digital itself is a new media, but the traditional part of digital retargeting has to be pulled back and rethought, across
Right.
there, I would say. And therefore, brands like Bata, so I think for us, it becomes very important for us to start looking at niche content, where my consumers are. Smita touched upon that, At the end of the day, you want to connect with the real consumer, So you look at those independent media outlets, those niche content, publishers, where your consumers are going to be there. So I think you decide, where you want to invest there. And I think there would be some of these third-party alternatives, cookies. Like I think Google is talking about Flock. I don't understand some of the tech there, but I think they are actually talking a little bit about that. So I would say, there's going to be a little bit disruption. I think we all need to be ready as advertisers there. Some will be slightly ahead, some will actually, learn, but test and learn, what really works, for us across there. I would also say that, since each of these walled gardens would actually start their own measurement metrics. So rethink, ad measurement practices, A simple way would be, like the traditional Indian businessman would say, how much is the input you are invested and how much is the output, and then you measure it over a long period, don't just think short term, across there. So I think that ROAS, it's a term, return on advertising spend, it has to actually grow over a period of time. So don't look at short term, because there will be a lot of disruption, And I think start developing these relationships, with the walled gardens, So you will see that, how, some of the walled gardens will actually come in. They will say, I own the system, and therefore the ecosystem, I would say, and therefore, do that. But I think the main thing is, you start building your first party data, start investing in your own market, so that you also have an advantage, If you have some like-minded publishers or partners, or other retailers or CPG partners, just cross-pollinate the data, to make it much more retail.
I think a lot of focus will also go on, like you also mentioned, on creating the niche content for specific content for specific target audiences, because since the first party data, I mean, like it will be more of a personalized kind of communication,
right,
one-on-one that Smita mentioned.
Yeah, because you will no longer be able to rely on a third party cookie, and therefore you will gravitate towards much more sharper targeting. Yes. What you were earlier relying on ad exchanges to do, you will now need to actually figure it out slightly yourself. So that's why I was saying, test and learn, because every brand or every category of brand would need to do it. Some of us are actually retailers, so we have slightly more closer contact with the consumers. CPG brands who are slightly away, but there also I'm seeing some innovation, like Colgate. I actually saw that they started embedding the small QR codes on the paste, to chew. Yes. And the other day I was just scanning it and seeing, what happens, So they take you to a page where they actually ask you to register and say, okay, hey, you can get some free advice from dentists, So I'm saying these brands are also realizing, the CPG brands as one example, that they need to start building some of these, consumer audience space, because of the upcoming cookie-less world.
Right, right. Rohit, in a nutshell, your thoughts on, how the entire, not just digital marketing, but the entire digital ecosystem, will reshape.
Right. I mean, this is like going to be longish in terms of response, but what I can say is that brands are going to take a lot more control over media buying and starting from the CDP. So, like we said, that there are DSPs where brands are spending money today. I think that capability they like to in-house, because that's how they will build optimization. And as digital becomes the centerpiece, all the traditional media is also like coming together into digital and programmatic. If you see some of the data in US, I mean, almost 90% of the media buys are moved to programmatic. So programmatic gives you lots of advantages of not tying into one publication, but it gives you much data-led buying. So with that and traditional coming together, I think for every brand which is today looking at digital as a key medium, has to have deeper inroads into the data itself, the user level data, the media partnership, all of that. So in-housing will be very important. I always also say that because I think the competitive advantage is missing currently in the industry. So while I am doing everything at my end to curate data, to build segments, to understand the consumers, but when I go out there to execute my brand strategy, I'm using the standard platforms. So everybody in my competition as a brand is also using 360, also using MediaMath, Trade Desk, and other platforms. There's no custom element in the execution. I think that's something which brands should very closely study and look at, that how can they translate their boardroom strategies into the execution, because the user is same and everyone is using the same platform, tricks are same. So how can you build competitive advantage there? That's very important. So these are the things, I mean, these are the two areas that I think would define how marketers are going to win the next digital world.
Interesting. And finally, Amit, your thoughts. How do you think this entire ecosystem will change?
See, the promise of programmatic was, delivering efficiency via automation plus ability to identify who you are serving the ad, right? So it's critical. Whatever we do, it's going to be a long-term solution. Having said that, there is no single solution that's going to work for everyone. Like I said, there are deterministic identifiers, but they're very accurate, but at the same time, scale is a very, very big problem.
Right.
Similarly, there are probabilistic solutions, but at the same time, they're not so accurate. And finally, when we talk about contextual, and Anand and Smita have been talking about that a lot, ability to be able to serve ads in the best possible environment, and specifically the creatives, in the sense, the messaging that you probably have to send across to your consumers. From a programmatic standpoint, we basically are kind of agnostic to all the solutions which are available in the market. So in the sense that the solutions or the product that we have built up, which is basically Identity Hub, what it does is it supports majority of the identity solutions available in the market. I'm not sure, Rohit, because this is also news to me that you're also working on your own identity solution. Maybe we'll work towards compatibility with Identity Hub. But you name us identity solution, LiveRamp, Blue2May, TTD's Unified ID 2.0, all of that. What we are basically trying to do is enable buyers and publishers to come to experiment, test, see what works for them, what doesn't work for them in terms of identification. And then by the time it is cookie going away, most of the times, like most of the advertisers, agencies probably have a solution in hand that this is the identity solution which works best for them in terms of delivering the right kind of ROI. So I would say, yeah, I think things will probably evolve, and things will probably evolve for a much better programmatic ecosystem where users are, respected in terms of privacy, but at the same time also being sent across the right messages and the creatives.
Great. So some really great insights there, that were shared, within the session. Thank you very much, all of you, Rohit, Amit, Anand, and Smita, for joining today and sharing your thoughts and how, you are planning to, to counter the cookie-less future, which is coming on, and how the overall programmatic advertising will be shaped in the future, and what are the alternatives. And Rohit and Amit shared a few solutions, and how Anand and Smita are looking at the overall customer journey. So it was pretty interesting. Thank you very much for joining, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for such a detailed discussion. Certainly, this discussion has covered all the important points. Now it's time for the next session. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen.